100 years ago, the actual site above the river valley began to grow and show evidence of settlement. Bentley and Company opened a general store and a tent in June. 5 months later, the number of homes grew and the population exploded to 1,200. Since that time, progress has been a major factor in the development of our city. The late 1800s showed increasing development. I'm sorry.
It's too fast.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Don't you think you need the mic?
Well, I'll stand it up and talk louder. Okay. This slide is dated 1888. I'd like you to notice the scattering and sparsity of the early settlement. Okay. This is in 1889. Even in these early years, the bank and the church were seen as important necessities. In this slide, there is a Union Bank and a Church of England. Okay. This is a map dated 1890. Notice that Lethbridge wasn't laid out on a standard grid. It was laid out according to the line of the railway line. In 1902, there was a devastating flood. It was a crushing blow to those residents of the river valley in coal banks. Many realized the necessity at this time of living up top. And again, and again. After this tragic episode, few returned to the bottom to live. This is a 1900 view of Lethbridge from the Belly River. 5th Street South was the area of the focal point of development for Lethbridge. This is the Galt Gardens. They were an important factor within the city. First trees planted here died, but after irrigation arrived, residents fervently planted to escape the barrenness of many prairie towns and cities. As a result, trees in abundance lined the streets. In 1906, Lethbridge became a city. This view is interesting because it shows a beautiful Chinook arch. This is a 1909 view of Round Street, or the business area. It was just 2 years before, in 1906, that electric light and power came into being. This is a 1910 view showing the mounted police barracks, which is now the civic block where the ice arena is. This is another 1910 view of the downtown area. Notice the partially completed bridge in the background. The next 3 slides are of 1911. It is evident that in these years, progress was a steady process, with settlers arriving daily. And the next one. Okay. 1912 was a popular year for development. This slide shows streetcars, horses, and motor vehicles along one street. Obviously a city in transition.
This is First Avenue South?
There's the Kauffman.
This slide is also dated 1912. Notice the smallness of these homes. Although built by the mining company, many owned their own property. This is a feature which distinguishes the settlement of Lethbridge from many other transient communities. I believe that's on the north side.
But is that Galt or Westminster?
Westminster was property. And it's facing 13th Street. We're looking to 13th Street.
This is another slide dated 1912. All the buildings tended to be of wood frame construction during this time period. (1912) again. This is also 1912. Note the substantial homes in close proximity to one another. This was probably in an attempt to be identified as a town rather than farm homes.
Notice the lake up in the right-hand corner, that's where Sears is.
Sears is.
This is from that water tower, I bet. Take it.
The water tower
Yeah.
is right this way.
What is this street?
All I know, this is a dated 1912. I'm not sure. Yes, I believe that's Central School, and there was tennis courts on the other side there. This is a photograph dated 1912 of North Ward. I'd like you to note this and compare it to the following slide. This is the business area of 13th Street North. Now this was at the same time period. This is 5th Street. At this time there was a beautification movement, and there was street lamps, which you can notice there, and sidewalks were built, and the streetcar railway lines above.
And trees.
And trees, right.
And that's the Alexander, the brand new Alexander.
Oh, the brand new thing here.
It was brand new.
This is another 1912 slide. Just to note again the smallness of the homes, which housed relatively large families compared to what we have now. This is the CPR depot, a very busy place for the most part. Settlers and miners usually came by this route. The next two slides show attempts by residents to make their desert city appear productive. He's working fervently on his trees.
On that previous slide, was there a well there? I could see a...
Yeah, it looks like
Where we
a
have water from?
That's it.
Could have been, I don't know. Okay, next one. If one could send pictures of the productiveness to the east of looking like this of the land, it was hoped that it would draw settlers. I'm not sure. Over the years, our city grew and developed. This is an aerial view in 1945, and it shows the vast difference from the early years.
What year?
This is 1945.
I don't think the Civic Center was built in 45, the Civic Ice Center.
Sure it was. Yeah. Sure.
45?
Oh, yeah.
They were putting in bricks, and I was going to the same bricks.
It's close. The next slide is 1948, so maybe it'll make it a little clearer. I don't know if you can see where that same place, maybe not. That's an aerial view as well. Okay? And as the city continued to grow, as shown by this 1952 aerial view, and since that time it has expanded to West Lethbridge and has many new facelifts. Okay? That's all I have to say about the physical city. As I said, there are a lot of gaps, and if you do have you know, pictures that would fill in, that would be really nice, because I've got a real jump in there.
Okay, the following is a brief look at the economic development of the city of Lethbridge prior to World War I. With the coming of the Transcontinental Railway, the West would need a cheap and abundant source of energy. So in 1872, Nicholas Sharon began to produce coal on the west side of the Old Man River at a place called Coal Banks. In 1879, Elliot Galt, son of Sir Alexander Galt, visited Sharon's mines, and following his visit, persuaded his father to mine the valuable resource. In 1882, the Northwestern Coal and Navigation Company was incorporated and quickly obtained legal rights to a number of coal sites. The coal leases at Coal Banks were chosen to be the first site to be developed. In December of 1882, a small crew of Nova Scotian miners recruited by William Stafford dug 2 drift mines, and during that winter 22,000 tons of coal were produced. The coal was of good quality, but there was one major problem: how to bring the coal to the market. The immediate solution was to build a number of steamboats to carry the coal down the river to Medicine Hat. Unfortunately, the river was unsuitable for navigation for most of the year. Galt then decided to connect the mine to the CPR with a narrow gauge railway.
Where was that bridge?
That was taken in Medicine Hat. Okay. The narrow gauge railway ran from Lethbridge to Dunmore and was officially opened in September of 1885 in what was now called Lethbridge. Pictured is a narrow gauge engine of the Northwest Coal and Navigation Company. While the center of economic activity was the railroad and the coal mines, merchants began to conduct a lively business in hastily constructed stores. This is the I.G. Baker store. And this is the J.H. Kavanagh Dry Goods and Grocery Store. Okay. Some of the first citizens to come to Lethbridge were ambitious young businessmen who were later to play an influential role in the promotion of the community. One such man was Mr. Harry Bentley, seen here in the interior of the Bentley store. He's got a cap on and he has a mustache. After completion of the railway, Bentley built up a busy general store and within a year was one of the wealthiest men in Lethbridge. Throughout the 1880s, coal production expanded. In the later years, the Northwestern Coal and Navigation Company used this inclined railway to haul the coal from the river valley to the rail yards. Okay. The collieries required an enormous amount of support timber, and this was supplied by the company's sawmills. You can see it all being loaded here.
Was this a sawmill that was located near Fort McConnell?
Where was it?
Up in Beaver Mines.
The
Porcupine Hill.
first one was up in the Porcupine Hills, and a lot of the timber was hauled in from there. Okay. Coal mining machines were necessary for the Galts to compete successfully with American competition. The first coal cutting machine to be used in Alberta is seen here by the No. 1 drift mine entrance. William Stafford is in the picture on the right. Okay. By the end of 1890, coal production had soared to 1,000 tons a day. Although the river bottom mines were still in use, shaft No. 1 was the largest producer. By this time, the expected rush of settlers had still not arrived in Western Canada. Elliot Galt and C.A. Mcgrath saw irrigation as a solution to the slow trickle of settlers coming to the region. The idea of an irrigation system was warmly received by the businessmen of Lethbridge, who were interested in diversifying the economy and reducing Lethbridge's dependence on coal. By the turn of the century, Galt's dream of an irrigation system had become a reality. This shows the flume and the flume gate lock, and this is a bridge over the flume. From the late 1890s onward, agricultural activity expanded, but the first settlers to arrive preferred the cheaper and abundant non-irrigated farmland to the more expensive irrigated land. By 1906, agricultural expansion had spiraled into a land rush. This is breaking of the sod. Okay. In the early 1900s, the farmers were rewarded with an unusual wet cycle and high grain prices. It's a threshing outfit. And these pictures show the lineups at the land office with the land rush. A little bit of time here. The Western Canadian economy experienced a time of relative prosperity after the mid-1890s. As the surrounding countryside began to fill with settlers, Lethbridge became alive with activity. Building activity increased, and bonuses were promised to attract industry. Although Lethbridge did not become the thriving industrial metropolis that the early boosters of the community had envisioned, it did become a major distribution center for the region. This is Higginbotham's drugstore, and you notice the modern stone buildings, and the Hudson Bay store. This shows a trainload of tractors coming in, and it shows how Lethbridge was becoming a large distribution center for the entire area surrounding it. There was some industry, and this is the Lethbridge Ironworks.
Brewery in the back?
Yeah, with the brewery in the back, and here's a better picture of the brewery, the Lethbridge Brewing and Malting Company. And the Stacy Lumber Company. Okay. The prosperity of the times can be seen in the C.R. Daniels farm home built near Lethbridge. The home was a duplicate of Mrs. Daniels' home in Kentucky.
No, it wasn't.
Well, well, of
I'll
course.
tell you something. That's my father built that house. And who, if he had a house like that in Kentucky, would come up here? Anyway, that house was chosen out of a catalog out of Stacy's lumber yard that you just saw.
Oh, neat.
The catalog was published by a firm of architects in Minneapolis.
The building of the CPR viaduct from 1907 to 1909 stands as a permanent example of the rapid growth and technological change that the region experienced prior to World War I. And the following pictures show the various stages of the building. And that concludes the economic development in the early years.
You'll be able to catch me up on everything. I've been here only 3 years, and so what's in the book is what I'll tell you. This photo of Elliot Galt was taken in about 1879 when he was appointed Assistant Indian Commissioner for this area. He resigned 2 years later when the Northwest Coal and Navigation Company was founded by his father and himself. Although Elliot Galt never held political office, his influence was considerable, not only at the local level, but also at the federal level. His father was Sir Alexander Tilloch Galt, one of the fathers of Confederation, and friend of Sir John A. Macdonald. Elliot's grandfather was John Galt, the originator and organizer of the Canada Company. The Canada Company founded, and John Galt named, the city of Guelph, Ontario. Other Lethbridge residents who came from Guelph were the Staffords and the Higginbothams. Charles A. Mcgrath first saw the present site of Lethbridge in 1880 when he was on the way from Fort Macleod to Winnipeg with the Aldous Survey Party. He was later hired by the Northwest Coal and Navigation Company to run their land development department. Mcgrath and Aldous were then engaged to lay out the town site for Lethbridge. In 1889, the Board of Trade was formed, and Mcgrath was unanimously elected president. The Board of Trade was the forerunner of the town council. Mcgrath served in that capacity until the town was incorporated in April of 1890. It was decided that he should remain the chief executive until elections could be held, and he was duly elected mayor by acclamation in January of 1981. Mcgrath's career was long and illustrious. He was elected to the Northwest Territorial Legislature in 1891, 1894, and 1897. He was a legislative member of Parliament from 1908 to 1911. Now, in 1911, Mcgrath was appointed to the International Joint Commission, which was surveying the 49th parallel. And in 1914, he was the chairman of the Canadian section. Now, also in 1911, he was one of the representatives of the Canadian House of Commons at the coronation of King George V. Mcgrath also was the chairman of the Ontario Hydroelectric Power Commission for several years. And he also found time to publish a book called Canada's Growth, which deals with some settlement problems of the West.
What year would that photograph have been taken? Do you know?
No, I don't. Dr. Leverett George de Weber, who is the man on the right, succeeded Mcgrath in 1899 as the member of the territorial government for Lethbridge, although he was actually from McLeod. Now, John D. Higginbotham had the first drugstore in southern Alberta. It was first located in Fort Macleod, but was moved to Lethbridge 1 year later in 1885. Higginbotham, as one of the members of the original Board of Trade, was instrumental in getting civic government for Lethbridge. He was not a stranger to politics, as his father was a member of the Dominion House of Commons from 1871 to 1878. Higginbotham was also the author of When the West Was Young, which was first published in 1933 and is used extensively for research. Now, this is Thomas Mifflin McNabb, who was mayor in 1894. He also had been a member of the original Board of Trade and served on the town council in 1892. He was a master mechanic for the Northwest Coal and Navigation Company. Now, the fourth mayor of Lethbridge was William Kauffman. He was a freight line operator, and along with his brother Frank, operated a wholesale grocery business. He was mayor in 1895. Now, perhaps one of the more colorful mayors was Dr. Frank Hamilton Newbern. Mcgrath described him as a master of lurid language. His temper was legendary. He was the first MD in Lethbridge, the first superintendent of the Galt Hospital, and the first professor of surgery at the University of Alberta. And he was mayor of Lethbridge in 1899, 1900, and 1905. George Rogers, a farm implement dealer, was mayor in 1906, and William Henderson in 1908 and 1909. Henderson was instrumental in setting up a park system, and the present Henderson Park is named for him. And he was one of the mayors who died while in office. This is Elias Adams, mayor in 1910 and 11, and George Hatch, who was mayor in 1912. Now, one of the more exciting political events happened on August 31st, 1910. Sir Wilfrid Laurier, Prime Minister of Canada, came to Lethbridge to officially open the new Galt Hospital. This was 1910. Now, this is the Prime Minister, and the driver is the now Senator de Weber, who had previously been a member of the Northwest Legislature. This welcoming arch symbolizes the city of Lethbridge. The columns are made of coal, and the top is made of wheat. And the greeting was even extended in French. Now, 9 years later, it was visiting royalty. The Prince of Wales, later King Edward VIII, was on an extensive North American tour. Its main purpose was trade, though, not politics. On September 7th, 1936, Lord Tweedsmuir, the Governor-General of Canada, visited Lethbridge. Now, all the local dignitaries turned out in their finery.
Okay, I'm going to start off with some of the ethnic qualities of Lethbridge, although I don't have too many slides. This is Chief Crow Eagle of the Pagans, and he signed Treaty Number 7 in 1876. Go ahead. And this is Chief Red Crow of the Bloods, who also signed Treaty Number 7 in 1876. Pardon me? Oh, I'm sorry, I stand corrected. 77. Okay, go ahead. This is just a photograph of the pagan camp in 1889. This is some women and children that are getting ready for a Sundance in 1888. Notice the costumes. I think they're wonderful. Okay, go ahead. This photograph is in 1900, and it's children on the Blood Reserve. I think one building is a school, and the other one is St. Paul's Anglican Church. And these were on the northern part of the reserve until 1924 when they were moved. As the caption at the top of the picture shows, this is old-timers of both races in 1906. They seem to be quite comfortable with each other. I'm not sure where this photograph came from, but it's delegates of a meeting of the Chinese Freemasons in 1924. And these are Estonian young people before 1908. Okay, I'm going to move on to a few occupations in the area. This is a photograph of Howell Harris, one of the first whiskey traders in 1870. I believe Howell Harris is also in this photograph on the left, and this is a Circle Ranch roundup near Lethbridge. I'm sorry, he's on the right.
What ranch?
Circle Ranch? I don't know exactly where that is.
No, there's another picture of survey crew, but that's not survey crew. And that looks very good.
Oh, do I? Okay. This is the Alberta Brewery. It's Fitzik proprietor. And I'm not sure, but I think it's on the same location as the brewery is now. Does anybody know? Okay, the next couple of photographs go with the brewery. These are some of the workers. I don't know any of the names. Okay. This is the bottling plant and the shipping department. These are all photographs from 1912. And this is the Slack Barrel Cooper shop. Okay. This is Nicholas Sharon in 1880. He was Alberta's first coal miner, and he mined coal at Fort Whoop-Up in 1870, and in 1882 opened a mine on the river at Coal Banks. This is William Stafford in 1890. He was the first superintendent of the Northwestern Coal and Navigation Company. Again, the next following photographs are just some of the employees. I thought this photograph was interesting because if you notice in the upper left-hand corner, there's, I believe he's Oriental, standing alone, not grouped with the other men. This is just a photograph of the foot of the inclined railway. This is a Galt No. 3 mine at Staffordville. And this is the Galt No. 8 mine, which I believe is still standing along the river. Earlier you saw a photograph of the Lethbridge Ironworks. Well, these are some of the interior shots. This one and the following photograph. This is a photograph of a gentleman selling prayer books and eye openers on the street corner, 1912. This is just a picture of some of the men that were working on the viaduct, CPR viaduct. This is a group of men on a steam tractor. Crews of men such as these would travel from farm to farm and help with harvesting. And this is a CJOC radio station in 1929. I don't know the location. What did they say? I missed it. Oh, top of the Marquis Hotel. Okay. Yes. I'm not sure. That's all the information I had. Top? Oops. Okay, go ahead. Now I'm going to move on to a few of the residences in the area. As we all know, this is the Victorian Mansion, which still stands, I believe, on the corner of 3rd Avenue and 10th Street South. This is Mr. Downer's residence, which is now the Chinook Club, on the corner of 3rd Avenue and 13th Street South. Yeah. And just to show the contrast, this is a view of some of the shacks that were on the outskirts. I don't know who lived here, what their occupations were. It just says on the outskirts, 1912. This was the residence of some of the mine workers. They grouped together and lived in sections on their own. Although not all of them did, but a lot of them.
See that little house back there?
Mm-hmm. This is just a boarding house. I'm not sure of the location of that either. And this is the Clark boarding house. I thought it was interesting because I think there are miners on the bottom there and nurses on the top, all living in the same place. I can't tell if I can't tell. They're nurses. What are they?
Maybe ladies of the evening.
Oh, perhaps. This is the dormitory of the Alberta Railway and Coal Company in 1890. And this was a child detention home that was built south of the Galt Hospital, and it was later remodeled as a nurse's residence. Unfortunately, it's not standing any longer. This is just a few photographs of leisure and recreation. This is Charles Roseanne's home in 1890. They must be outside. Obviously, they're not having one of our wonderful Chinook winds, or else they wouldn't be playing cards. This is interesting. This is Fred Moses and a nurse, and they have switched uniforms. And a few boys swimming in the river. And this is 1912. This is some men, yes, shoveling off the railway. Now, my date is 1912, but I'm not sure on that. And nobody knows for sure? And that's it. That concludes my section on social structures.
As Dr. Tagg just pointed out, there really is not a great difference between the social. But the most important thing that I thought when I was doing the research on it was that the main reason for culture in Lethbridge was the trying to transplant the culture from wherever the people came from. For example, Lethbridge is mainly Eastern Canada and Great Britain, and that's exactly what they tried to do, was transplant those cultures in the West. Parades were used not only for entertainment, but also to demonstrate group solidarity. In this case, the Labour Trade Council band slogged through the mud to entertain the people of Lethbridge. And here the Masons are on parade. And this is the British Empire float made for a parade in 1912. And these boys, from what organization I don't know, are carrying guns, which was a lot more acceptable in 1912 than it would be today. Another major event in Lethbridge was the annual fair, held on the same grounds in 1912 as it is today. Unlike today, however, the fair was a place one would dress up for and meet one's friends in a relatively civilized atmosphere. And there's always plenty of excitement in the fairs. But this is a picture of a man jumping on a bicycle. You know, he's jumping from a chute on a bicycle. And whoever it was, I have no idea. And why he was doing that, I have no idea. Or why he would want to do that, I have no idea. And these trapeze artists sort of lack refinement, but they undoubtedly provided a lot of thrills and chills. And these talented young can-can dancers aren't exactly what can be found in New York today, but this is a calf branding competition, and this particular picture is of D. Kinsey, and he was the winner, and his time was 9 minutes and 4 seconds, and he branded 25 calves. So he's very quick at that. And this is Tom Three Persons on a bucking horse. And something you don't find today is stock car racing. And this is a picture of Barney Oldfield, and he's raising quite a bit of dust. Sports, organized or otherwise, have always been an important part of life in Lethbridge. And these young men were part of a YMCA gym class in 1912. And as you can see, their dexterity is truly admirable. Track and field meets provided tough competition for the young athletic people of Lethbridge.
You know where that location is?
No. Where is it?
Where?
Is it? The fairgrounds. One's at Victoria Park. It's hard to tell. You can go to the next one. And that's the high jump. I don't know, with the grandstand, where would it be? Lethbridge is also famous for its lacrosse teams, which it isn't anymore. And this was one, I believe, in 1912. And this team won the Lavaseur Championship in 1902, which was fairly prestigious. And baseball was also a thriving sport then. Yeah, a little before his time. Okay. Informally, football matches were popular, especially when they occurred in January or February in the middle of a Chinook. And photographs could be taken and sent to Europe and other places telling how tropical we are and what a wonderful place it is. Yes. Yes, it is. In the square. Yeah. The next picture, the building to your left is the ARI building. There were also more genteel sports, if you were thusly inclined, like lawn tennis, perhaps. Or Henderson Lake could provide a leisurely Sunday afternoon of rowing.
That's on the, I've never been straight on this. Is this on the golf course side?
No.
Oh, I see.
And even in the winter, there was plenty to do at Henderson Lake. There's another one, if you want to go through it. If one was musically inclined, there were plenty of concerts to attend. I can't see it from here. Oh yes, Islanders at home. Or in this case, it was the celebration of Queen Victoria's Jubilee in 1897, and a full day of activities was planned. And Lethbridge Theatres added a grand atmosphere to the city. This is the Sherman Theatre, with the Alberta Loan and Investment Company over top. Okay. But the grandest was the Majestic. And this is the interior. Concerts might have been given by the Miners Band, like this one in 1912, or by the Northwest Mounted Police H Troop Band in 1888. Or you could simply organize an informal group of friends and play to your heart's content. With all the cultural functions, Lethbridgians had to be well dressed, so consequently ladies of fashion habituated clothing stores like this. And I don't know which one it is, so if anyone can tell me, it was. And Alice Gillespie could always be counted on to add class when she appeared in a gown apparently belonging to Queen Victoria. How she came about it, I don't know. And these men are described on the description of the photograph as wearing large aprons and holding fat cigars, but apparently they're cigar makers.